I've never sexually assaulted anyone. Not in high school, not in college, not ever.
So here we go. I think today is going to be a very interesting and complicated day. Today in this episode of Real America, we're going to be doing things a little differently. We're going to be covering the anticipated and historic Senate hearings in Washington. And we have invited three guests who have been listening all day to the testimony of Judge Brett Kavanaugh, who has been nominated by President Trump to become the next Supreme Court Justice, and to Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, who has accused Brett Kavanaugh of sexual misconduct. Now, this is a conversation that we're having in this nation and that we need to have at home because it has to do with the way we treat women in this country. It has to do with sexual assault. It has to do with respect, and also it has to do with politics. So today, Real America becomes Real Talk. And this is how everything started.
Breaking news now from Washington, D.C. Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy has just announced his retirement.
President Trump has nominated
Brett Kavanaugh to the United States Supreme Court.
Christine Blasey Ford alleging that Brett Kavanaugh sexually assaulted her more than 35 years ago.
She says Kavanaugh pinned her to a bed, groped her, and tried to cover her mouth to prevent her from screaming.
I've never sexually assaulted anyone.
We believe Christine Ford.
I will oppose him with everything I've got.
This fine nominee to the Supreme Court will receive a vote in this Senate in the near future.
I'm heading into the studio. Now, let's meet the panel.
Hi, my name is Jessica Fernandez. I'm the daughter of Cuban exiles, first-generation American, and I'm the chair of the Miami Young Republicans.
Hi, my name is Sanjana Palla. I'm a third-year law student at the University of Miami and currently serve as the president of Miami Law Women.
My name is Emma Solkowitz. I'm an artist and an activist.
Thanks for being here, and let me tell you something. I still remember when I covered in 1991 the Anita Hill hearings, and I think we will remember a day like today. So let me start with something very simple. Who do you believe? Do you believe her or do you believe him? Emma?
I believe her. I mean, I think in the green room you mentioned that you were going to ask about why this case relates to each of us personally. And I think that's a really beautiful way to introduce this topic, because I think that as we've learned through the Me Too movement, sexual assault is this thing that will affect everyone, whether it's 1 degree of separation or it's happened to you yourself. And for me, when I was sexually assaulted at Columbia University and had to go through the hearing process there, it's, the same types of questions were being asked of me, the same types of, the same burden of proof was put on me.
You tweeted about it today, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, and it really eerily feels like rewatching my own sexual assault hearing on a bigger stage today.
How about you, Jessica?
Yeah. I'm not sure. I think that there's a lot of questions. I think what we learned today, I don't think we learned anything new today in the hearing. I think we heard that there was a lot of questions more than answers. I'm inclined to, well, I mean, I think the fact that that Dr. Ford doesn't remember the time, the place, the location, that none of the witnesses or potential witnesses contemporaneously corroborated her story, or now. I think that draws a lot of serious questions in my mind, especially when we're considering somebody who was a federal judge for about 12 years, I think, and has, until 2 weeks ago, has had an unblemished record. So
it's political,
I think it's a total political theater show, absolutely.
Sanjana?
I definitely think it's important to believe every single sexual assault, somebody who comes forward saying that they've been sexually assaulted, because it is incredibly difficult to get the courage to come forward and discuss that issue. Because talking about an incident like that happening to them is reliving that trauma. And the first thing that we as America need to do is believe all of these young women and men who go through sexual assault, and then we can move forward with investigation.
Judge Kavanaugh, he said the following, that this is a national disgrace.
Right.
He said that there's no corroboration, and I was not there. That's what he said. And you say, Emma?
I think that when he's saying that he has not sexually assaulted her, I think he truly believes that. I think that his political stances on abortion and women's rights show us that he actually believes that women's bodies are not their own to own. I think he believes that he does have legitimate ownership over women's bodies. So when he does treat a woman like a toy, it's fully within his right. It's not, to him, it doesn't count as an assault. So I think that when he makes these kinds of defensive statements, like, he really feels like he's telling the truth.
That it doesn't count as an assault.
To him, I don't believe he would see it as an assault.
You agree with that?
Owns them.
No, I think that, there's no accountability for his actions. And he genuinely, he says, I black out a lot. I don't know, but I definitely wasn't there. It's not on my calendars. Like, what high school teenager puts party on your calendar and then, blacks out, and everybody, as teenagers, we all say things that like, oh, I didn't do that or something.
I mean, with all due respect, the only person with blackouts here is Dr. Ford, who cannot seem to remember key details about what happened. She can't remember who was at the party. She can't remember who shoved her. She can't remember how she got there, how she got home. She can't remember a lot of things that happened during the day. And although I think it's important for us...
She lived a traumatic experience.
Yeah, she seems to be traumatized, for sure.
It's psychological proof and evidence, and even Dr. Ford said that in her, when she was speaking, that when people go through such severe trauma, they remember certain very specific incidents, the central incident, and all peripheral details are not important. Not to say they're not important, but they become hazy because they're so focused on what is the trauma that they're actually experiencing.
Is that?
Yeah, and I'd love to add on to that. Yes. I think that's a really great point to bring up. I think that if she were this kind of reckless person who was out to smear the reputation of this potential Supreme Court justice, she's a very smart person. Like, she has amazing credentials, and she would have known that the one thing people want from her, as you mentioned, are witnesses. And her friends seem to be willing to back up her account. But, if she really wanted to go all the way, she would have prepared, a well-thought-out case, had someone lie and say that they were there and saw her. But, I think that these gaps in her testimony are actually evidence of her honesty, that she wouldn't go all the way and make up all the evidence that people wish she would make up.
I don't think that she's making anything up per se. I think that she seems to be very unclear about certain things, but then seems to be very 100% clear on other things. So as somebody who's charged with analyzing this information, you have to weigh the preponderance of evidence. Is there more evidence that suggests that this could have happened, or is there more evidence that this didn't happen? I don't think that we can say definitively today that this happened.
We don't know the truth. You think, after listening to both of them, you don't know the truth?
I don't think that we have anything that says that Dr. Ford and Judge Kavanaugh met. I don't think that... Met in person. I don't think that we have anything that can prove that it happened.
I think when you say words like preponderance of evidence, that's harmful for the overall understanding of the situation, because those are stages of evidence, right? And people are confusing that this is not actually a proceeding. Nobody is being sued here.
What's the rush? I mean, why do we need to do it so fast? Can we just wait? No, I don't know. Maybe a week or two or a month?
I don't think this has been fast. I mean, this has been going on since July.
But can we just wait? I mean,
it's the end of September.
Could be October or November, or no, Jessica?
I think this is political. We need to, if Judge Kavanaugh is going to get confirmed, let it happen tomorrow, yes or no. If not, we as a country can move on and have a nominee put forward.
So you agree with President Trump that this was created by Democrats?
Listen, I don't think that a Democrat spoke to Dr. Ford and told her to write a letter to the committee. I don't think that that's factual. I do think that Dr. Ford experienced something traumatic. I don't think that she has been able to show us or get her friends supposedly her friends that were at the party to say that this happened. And I think that's really damaging for her case.
I think that regardless of what we decide about Ford's case, about her testimony, about the two men who came forward that you've already said you couldn't corroborate, I think that what this shows is that, I mean, again, this is a job interview, and if every time there is, let's say he gets confirmed, every time there is a split decision in the Supreme Court, where it's a 4-5 decision, and he is one of the 5, our country will have another rift. And if the Supreme Court is meant to, unite the country and resolve conflict and be the arbiters of these kinds of rifts in the country. And every time there is a difficult decision, the entire people we as a nation have another one of these scandals where we have to question whether or not we can trust the Supreme Court, then I think that will be the end of the power of the Supreme Court as a government body.
Are we in a new era? This is the context. Could this have happened without the Me Too movement?
May I go for it? I think that, yes, I think that our country right now, given everyone's hyper-focus on this issue today, we are all sitting at our TV screens watching it now, shows that our country has a new set of needs. And we need Supreme Court justices who can serve those needs. Our government is supposed to serve the people, not the other way around. And I think that given that information, Kavanaugh is not fit for the Supreme Court. I think that the fact that every time he speaks, he will be at the center of this kind of rift shows that, we could choose another person that I will disagree politically who won't be at the center of this kind of controversy when he is on the Supreme Court. I think that, the Me Too movement is a sign that our country needs something different.
Jessica, how do you see it?
I do see this hearing being a victim of the Me Too movement.
A victim?
Yes, in a lot of ways. I think that we have conflated two issues. I mean, we have an accusation. It's not a corroborated accusation against somebody who, in their life that we have evidence of, has conducted themselves with integrity. And in 2 weeks, your entire character can be assassinated. Everything about your life can be turned upside down. You might have to potentially explain to your 10-year-old daughter what groping is. And if Judge Kavanaugh is innocent of these charges, I think that that's a really gross thing that to happen. And I think that it's quite a high price to ask somebody to pay to become a nominee for the Supreme Court.
I think I respectfully disagree with that because the Me Too movement has allowed women, young women specifically, to feel at least some form of support from their country that they can come forward and that the people that have attacked them can face some form of punishment. Not necessarily there hasn't been enough. Take for example.
Even if you're a teenager.
Even if you're a teenager, take for example Brock Turner's case. I just think that if this ends up with Kavanaugh being appointed, that could be a huge blow for the Me Too movement and for young American women who it is already so incredibly difficult as for you that to come forward and talk about these traumatic incidences.
Let me finish with this.
Yeah.
What's the lesson? If you were to send a message to men and boys in the United States, what would that message be?
Jorge, I have brothers. I have 4 brothers. I have male cousins. I have a lot of male friends. I would tell them to be very careful who their friends are. I would tell them to be very careful about their actions. Obviously, I only expect the highest level of behavior and decency from the people that I hang out with and would not tolerate any of this type of behavior. I would tell them that they need to be very careful because at any time, their character could be questioned and false accusations could be landed against them. And for women, I would tell them that I think it's very important if you have been a victim of sexual assault to come forward and to tell your story. However, I will also caution those women that it's going to be a difficult journey for them as well.
Lesson.
I think the lesson for men in America is that a woman's body is not something to be taken for granted and to be used for your pleasure. You do not have a right to anybody else. And I also want to say that, men also get sexually assaulted. So in all fairness, that nobody else's body is your right. And you have to be respectful of other people and hold everybody to the utmost respect.
Last word for you, Emma.
Thank you. I think that, one thing that really stuck with me was something that Christine Ford's husband actually said. And he said, you can't lie your way into the Supreme Court. I think that for me, one of the most despicable things that I've seen throughout these hearings is that something about it for me is that the assault itself is terrible, but what makes it worse is that someone is willing to lie to cover it up. And I think that we need to create a culture in which men can own up to their mistakes and feel comfortable thinking maybe what I did didn't read as sexual assault in my mind when I was doing it, but clearly it hurt you. How can I make amends to that? And I think that we need a more reparative culture. And I will say that you talk about how bad you feel for women having to experience all of this harassment when they come forward, but I feel like the way you speak is part of the problem. I think that when people like you speak the way that you just did, people like you were part of what made me feel so terrible when I came out about my assault. I think that there's a reason that when I was assaulted, I didn't tell anyone for a long time. I kept it hidden because I was worried that people like you would say the things that you just did. So I think that we need to be careful especially like commentators with a platform. We're sitting here and we have a platform and people can hear us and we're sending a message to women. So when people like you say those things, it will scare more women. It will scare more male survivors, especially transgender survivors. Survivors all over the world are getting the message from us here right now, what's okay and what to be afraid of. So I think we have...
Can I respond?
Yeah.
I really feel for any situation that you might have gone to, but I question, what you mean by when you say people like me. I'm a woman. I've been a victim of sexual assault. I was drugged and raped. I have been sexually harassed at work, so I'm not sure what you mean by that comment. I mean, I think a lot of times on a program like this or just in everyday life, people seem to make assumptions about each other because it's just the easiest way for us to put two and two together. I really try to live my life being really open-minded to everybody, LGBT, human rights issues, things that matter to our country. I also think that a cornerstone of America is the judicial process system, the knowledge that in this country, you are innocent until proven guilty. Every accuser should have the right to voice their accusation, and every accused should have the right to defend themselves.
Yeah. When you came out, did you meet with lots of suspicion or come across suspicion in people who did not believe you?
Like 2/3 of Americans that have been asked about this, I did not report. I did not have anybody question me when I told my family and close friends, nobody questioned me on whether I was telling the truth or not. No, I did not experience that, thankfully.
People generally believed you.
That's not always common for everybody, though. That's none of my, I was sitting with a group of friends just the other day, and every single one of us had some sexual assault incident happen to us, and that's astounding. Out of 5 women, every single person had some incident of sexual harassment or sexual assault occurred to them. And
all the women sitting here.
Yeah.
Right? But I think at the same time, we have the obligation to say what happened to us, but we also have the obligation to hear the other person, because in this country, the standard, thank God, that's why my parents came here from Cuba and they were exiles, is because this country has justice, has a justice system where you are innocent until proven guilty. That's just the way it is, and I love it.
In this particular case, we are privileging a man's future over a victim's burden for all these years. She has had to carry that with her for 36 years. And the first time she has mentioned it was in therapy in 2012, and that's significant.
So do we think that her ability to, do we think that her innocence or his innocence is more important, or being able to prove innocence or truth, do you think that's more important than just any accusation?
I think,
Or do you think getting the truth is more important than just blanketly believing anybody that says that they've been assaulted?
Oh, the truth is important. That's why we need an FBI investigation. And that's what, if he's clean, then you should open it, come forward with it with open arms.
And I really want to thank you for this conversation, for your honesty and for your courage to share those very personal moments with us is so valuable, so important. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I am right now in Washington, D.C. with thousands of women that have come from across the country to protest the nomination.
Brett Kavanaugh stands against the freedoms that